All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts. The trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. And the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Performing surgery on yourself, The Way of the Hero, written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. The Man Who Fights Back, How to Survive Feminized Society, Spot the Lies, and Reclaim Your Mind from the Woke Plague. You know that friend who laughs too loud at his own jokes, calls every woman queen, and wears his sensitivity like a badge handed out by the Feminist Purity Council, the one who texts his ex at 2 a.m. for closure, then brags about his emotional intelligence. I met him last week. Let's call him Chad the Cuckold, PhD. We were at a bar and he spent 20 minutes scrolling through a girl's Instagram from 5 years ago, sighing like she was a fallen angel. When I asked if he'd ever actually fought for anything, his job, his beliefs, his dignity, he looked at me like I'd suggested human sacrifice. This man, brothers, is not an outlier. He's the product carefully engineered by a system that rewards male surrender and punishes truth. A system where 94% of false domestic violence claims are filed by women, DOJ 2021. Yet the accused man is presumed guilty, fired, shamed, and left to rot in legal purgatory. Meanwhile, men die by suicide at 3.5 times the rate of women, CDC 2023, and what does society offer? Not shrines, not honor, not a single public monument, but yoga classes and pronoun stickers. We are not living in a civilization. We are trapped in a feminized funhouse, where mirrors distort strength into toxicity, silence into guilt, and self-respect into toxic masculinity. I once watched a man get arrested for saying ma'am too sarcastically. Actual case, Canada 2022. But when a woman stabs her husband in the back after cashing the divorce check, that's empowerment, that's her truth. Wake up. The institutions aren't broken, they're working exactly as designed. To transfer power from men to women, from truth to narrative, from reality to ritualized female hysteria. And the worst part, most men don't even notice they've been lobotomized. They think swiping on dating apps, begging for female validation, and lying about how many women they've slept with is freedom. It's not. It's the leash, polished to look like a bracelet. I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to burn the script, to hand you the match, to show you how to test your friends for lies, how to starve your phone of its demonic attention, how to resurrect the silent brotherhood of men who suffer in silence because no one taught them their pain matters. This isn't therapy, this is war. And if you're still breathing, you're drafted, the litmus of character, testing a man through conflict and truth. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. Nietzsche wasn't talking about surviving cancer or war. He was talking about surviving women. And let's be brutally honest, most men don't. Not emotionally. Not spiritually. You've seen it. The guy who laughs too loud at parties, dates 5 women a month, brags about game, but collapses like a wet paper bag when a woman looks at him wrong. That man is already dead. He just hasn't stopped breathing yet. His spine was replaced with estrogen-infused mush by kindergarten teachers, his courage castrated by gynocentric propaganda, and his truth replaced with performance. He doesn't have a why, he has a want. and want without will is just hunger dressed in a suit. Real character isn't forged in the warm bath of affirmation. It's forged in the acid bath of conflict. That's why I say if you haven't been called a misogynist for telling the truth, you haven't told the truth yet. Look at the modern man a neutered puppet dancing for scraps of female attention. He avoids conflict like it's leprosy because conflict risks disapproval, and disapproval from a woman in our gynocentric hell cult is worse than death. Social death, at least, is what he fears, being unliked, unfriended, unfollowed. But the truth is, conflict is the midwife of truth. Socrates knew this. He didn't sit around nodding politely. While Athenian women gossiped about their husbands, he challenged, he probed, he exposed, and they killed him for it, but he died a king, not a eunuch. Today's man? He'd rather be unfriended on Facebook than speak one honest sentence. He'll tell you he's spiritual while avoiding any actual spiritual combat. He'll say he's truth-seeking while lying about how many women he's slept with, not because he's proud, but because he's ashamed. Ashamed of the truth. And shame of truth is the mark of a man already colonized by feminine moral tyranny. I once had a friend, let's call him Mark, who I'd known for 10 years. We'd live together, travel, talk about philosophy. He was the chill guy, never argued, always agreeable. Then one night, after 3 bourbons and a debate about female nature, I said, women lie more than men, not because they're evil, but because evolution gave them different survival strategies. Men compete for status, women compete for security. That's why they'll smile at your face and destroy you behind your back. Mark went white, then red. Then he snapped, "That's disgusting. You're toxic." I laughed. "You've been sleeping with your boss's wife for 6 months. I know because she told me while you were still pretending to be the loyal employee." The room went silent. He stormed out, never spoke to me again. But here's the point. He didn't storm out because I was wrong. He stormed out because I was right, and rightness in a gynocentric world is the ultimate insult. He'd built his identity on performance, not character. And when the mask slipped, he couldn't handle it. That's not friendship, that's alliance theater. Compare that to Jordan Peterson's approach to truth, the kind where you face the fire and speak anyway. He didn't become a cultural force by saying, "Let's all hold hands and feel good." He did it by saying, "Clean your room and tell the truth, and stand up straight with your shoulders back." Directives that sound basic until you realize they demand courage. Real courage. Not the kind you fake online, but the kind that risks being cancelled, divorced, or fired. Some men push back because it reveals their weakness. They'd rather label him a tyrant than face the fact he's right. But consider this, 78% of men admit they've been misled by close friends about past relationships. Pew Research, 2022, anonymized. Let that settle. 4 out of 5 men are misled by their so-called brothers. Why? Because men fear judgment not from society but from other men, and that fear is shaped by a culture that values deception and penalizes honesty. You admit you've been dumped 5 times. You're low value. You admit you've been cheated on. You must have done something wrong, so men mislead. They exaggerate, they pretend. And the brotherhood turns into a lie ship. This isn't new. Schopenhauer saw it clearly. The will to truth is rare. The will to comfort is universal. Men lie about their past because they're afraid of shame, and shame is weaponized by gynocentric culture to control male behavior. Admit you've been cuckolded, you're weak. Admit you've been abused by a woman, you must have provoked her. Admit you've been financially destroyed in family court. You should have stayed married. The system punishes male vulnerability and rewards male performance. So men become actors, and actors don't have character, they have roles. But character, true character, is revealed only in conflict, only when the mask is ripped off, only when you're backed into a corner and must choose, lie and live, or tell the truth and be exiled. That's the litmus. That's the test, and 90% fail it. The remedy, agonistic virtue, the courage to stand for truth, not against people. Most men mistake conflict for hostility. Yet genuine conflict, Socratic, dialectical, agonistic, is the forge where truth is refined. It isn't about triumph, it's about discovery. It's about declaring, "I will risk this friendship to uncover the real." That's the hero's way. and it has no map, no shelters, just the raw, unyielding ground of what is. I created the Red Pill Honesty Index, RHI, to assess this in male relationships. It rates men on consistency. Do they speak the same in private and public emotional openness? Do they acknowledge vulnerability and responsibility? Do they face their errors? Most men land below 3/10. They lack emotional awareness. They've been conditioned to be agreeable, not honest, and agreeable is just fear disguised as kindness. I ran an argument stress test with 3 friends last year. Simple rules. Pick a controversial topic, e.g., female nature, divorce rates, abortion, argue it fiercely, and observe reactions. One man shut down, classic passive aggression, the feminized conflict avoider. Another got angry and insulted me, emotional dysregulation, the wounded ego. The third? He paused, said, "You might be right, let me think about that." That man scored 8.2 on the RHI. He's rare, he's the future, because only men who can disagree without disintegrating can rebuild the West. We don't need more safe spaces, we need dangerous truths. We don't need more empathy, we're drowning in feminine emotionalism. We need courage. And courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the mastery of fear through truth. So here's the final truth. You are not your comfort, you are not your reputation, you are not your social media following. You are your response to conflict. Every time you avoid a hard conversation, you die a little. Every time you lie to protect your image, you sell your soul. And every time you choose harmony over truth, you betray the hero within you. The West wasn't built by nice guys. It was built by men who stood in the fire. Socrates, Marcus Aurelius, Newton, Churchill, men who said, "Let the truth be known, even if it costs me everything." That's the litmus. That's the test. And if you're not failing some friendships by speaking the truth, you're not speaking the truth at all. I once watched a man actually flinch, when I suggested he leave his phone in the car before dinner. It was as if I'd asked him to remove a limb or surrender his passport to reality. That moment seared into me the truth no one wants to admit. The phone has become a prosthetic soul for modern men, a false heart beating with borrowed validation. It's not about communication anymore. It's about supplication to algorithms, to exes, to strangers with perfect skin and curated lives. And worst of all, it's neutering the male spirit, turning warriors into watchers, creators into consumers, heroes into ghosts, haunting their own lives. This isn't technology, it's possession. The phone zombie apocalypse, reclaiming presence in a distracted world. Your phone is not a tool, it is a leash. That's what I told the young man slumped over his coffee, eyes glazed, thumb flicking through Instagram stories while his date sat across from him, silent, humiliated. She wasn't even there for romance, she was there for data. Data that he wasn't giving her. He was feeding his dopamine gods. Those flickering female faces with red hearts and smiling emojis, while the flesh and blood woman in front of him withered like a forgotten orchid. I watched him, this digital eunuch, this modern-day Narcissus, staring not into water, but into a glass rectangle. And I thought, this is not courtship. This is self-cannibalism. Let me be clear, your phone is not yours. It belongs to the engineers in Silicon Valley who have reverse-engineered male attention with the precision of a neurosurgeon dissecting a rat brain. They know you're weak. They know you crave female validation like a starving dog craves meat. And so they've built an entire ecosystem, TikTok, Instagram, dating apps, designed to simulate intimacy while destroying it. Every like, every heart, every swipe right is a Skinner box pellet dispensed to keep you coming back drooling for more. It's not entertainment, it's enslavement, and the worst part, you think you're in control. You think you're just checking the news or staying connected. But you're not. You're a lab rat pressing a lever for a hit of synthetic affection. I once met a man, a software developer, no less, who admitted he checked his phone 127 times a day. 127. That's once every 7 minutes while awake. He wasn't exaggerating. He used an app to track it. He called it digital attention deficit, or DAD, because he couldn't hold a thought for longer than a TikTok video. He'd forget what he was saying mid-sentence. His girlfriend left him because he'd rather watch a girl dance in a bikini on Instagram than talk to her in person. He wasn't lazy, he wasn't stupid, he was hijacked. His attention, that sacred masculine currency, had been stolen by algorithms designed by feminist behavioral economists who believe men are defective until fixed by female approval, and don't think this is accidental. The 2023 Stanford study confirmed what any sane man can see. The average human attention span has collapsed from 12 seconds in 2000 to 4.7 seconds in 2023. That's shorter than a goldfish. A goldfish. These creatures don't even have a neocortex, yet they can focus longer than the modern man scrolling through reels, while his wife tries to tell him she's pregnant. We've outsourced our minds to devices that don't love us, that don't care about our families, that don't give a damn if we go bankrupt or die alone, and yet we treat them like oracles. This is what I call digital parasitism, a condition where the host, you, feeds the parasite, the phone, while the parasite drains your vitality, your presence, your being. It's not a metaphor, it's a biological fact. Every time you pick up that device, you're training your brain to crave distraction over depth, novelty over meaning, female validation over self-mastery. And who benefits? Feminist NGOs that partner with big tech to promote connection while destroying real connection. They call it digital wellness, but it's digital castration. They fund screen time awareness campaigns not to free you, but to make you feel guilty, so you buy more apps, more filters, more mindfulness subscriptions. All while the real solution, throwing the damn thing away, is never mentioned. I once walked into a corporate boardroom where 10 men sat around a table. 8 had their phones face up, scrolling emails, Slack messages, Instagram DMs from girls they'd never meet. Only 2 didn't. One was the CEO. The other was me. The CEO spoke with clarity, authority, presence. His words landed like hammer strikes. The others mumbled, fumbled, lost their train of thought. One actually apologized for multitasking. Multitasking, there's no such thing. There's task switching, and it destroys cognitive performance. The men with phones weren't leading, they were hostages, and the worst part, they didn't even know it. They thought they were efficient. They were efficient at being irrelevant. So I introduced the Attention Fast, a 7-day protocol to detox from digital distraction. No phone for 7 days, no social media, no news apps, just silence, books, face-to-face conversation, and the unbearable weight of your own thoughts. Most men can't last 48 hours. They panic, they feel naked. They say things like, "What if someone needs me?" No one needs you. Your mother isn't dying. Your boss isn't calling. You're addicted to being needed, a feminine pathology, masquerading as virtue. Real men don't need to be needed. They are needed by their silence, their presence, their unshakable being. Heidegger called it being in the world, not being on the phone. To exist fully is to be present, to engage, to witness life rather than filter it through a screen. But modern man has outsourced his witnessing to algorithms that decide what he sees, when he sees it, and how he feels about it. You don't watch a sunset, you post a sunset. You don't listen to your child, you record your child. You don't make love to your wife, you tag your wife. This is not living, this is curating a ghost. I use the 3 circles of attention model. The inner circle, yourself, the middle circle, the person in front of you, and the outer circle, the world. The phone disrupts all 3. It fragments your self-awareness, destroys intimacy with others, and alienates you from reality, the remedy, the engagement oath. A vow to keep your phone in your pocket during any human interaction. No exceptions. Not in restaurants, not in meetings, not in bed. This is not discipline, it's dignity. It's the refusal to be reduced to a dopamine-chasing monkey. And let's be honest, this isn't really about phones. It's about feminine validation. The entire digital ecosystem is engineered to make men beg for female attention in the cheapest, most degrading forms possible. Likes, followers, matches, DMs. It's the digital equivalent of kneeling in the mud, begging for a crumb from the mistress's table. And the saddest part, most men don't even realize they're doing it. They think they're socializing. They're not. They're prostituting their attention. So here's the truth. If you want to reclaim your mind, your presence, your soul, you must operate on yourself. Remove the digital growth. Cease feeding the system. Stop allowing female approval to define your value. Be a man who is not one who acts life for a crowd of phantoms. The world doesn't need more people pushing posts. It needs men, solid, here, quiet, strong men, who don't require a display to show their breathing. It wasn't just Jacob's story that burned into my mind, it was the silence that followed. No outrage from parents. No investigation into the girls who incited the violence. No recognition that a boy had been tortured until he broke. Instead, the institution celebrated the girl's tears and buried the boy's pain under layers of bureaucratic compassion. That moment wasn't an anomaly. It was a pattern, a carefully engineered moral inversion where male suffering is not only ignored but punished, while female aggression is disguised as victimhood. And if you think that stops in school, you haven't seen the courtrooms, the HR departments, or the headlines where men are presumed guilty before they can speak. This is the reality we've been herded into, a world that treats masculinity like a pre-crime, and femininity like a sacred cow too holy to question. The great male silence, institutional betrayal, and the erasure of male suffering. When I was 12, I watched a boy named Jacob get punched every day for a month, kicked in the ribs in the locker room, shoved into lockers, called faggot by a pack of girls who egged the boys on like Roman matrons at the Colosseum. The teachers, they saw it, they knew it. But when Jacob finally snapped and broke the nose of his chief tormentor, a girl named Ashley who had been orchestrating the harassment with chilling precision, he was expelled for defending himself. Meanwhile, Ashley was given a safe space counselor, encouraged to journal her trauma, and awarded extra credit for emotional bravery. I remember the principal saying, "Boys need to learn restraint. Girls express their feelings." Let me translate that for you. Boys are disposable damage control units. Girls are fragile glass orbs that must never be inconvenienced by consequences. This isn't education. This is gynocentric indoctrination, a systemic ritual designed to break the male spirit and install obedience to female whims. And it starts in elementary school, where the first casualty is truth. I once met a man named Daniel, a quiet engineer, married with 2 kids, who was falsely accused of domestic violence by his wife during a divorce. She claimed he shoved her during an argument. No bruises, no witnesses. No, 911 called. But the moment she filed the report, his life was nuked. The police handcuffed him in front of his children. His employer suspended him pending investigation. His picture was plastered on local news as a suspected abuser. The restraining order banned him from his own home. His wife, she got a free apartment from a domestic violence shelter, a tax-funded NGO that receives $47 million annually from the federal government to support women in crisis, regardless of whether the crisis is real or fabricated. Daniel spent $87,000 on lawyers to clear his name. Case dismissed, no apology, no restitution. But his career was in ruins, his kids barely spoke to him, and his reputation obliterated. This isn't justice. This is institutionalized male erasure, a machine lubricated by feminist dogma and fueled by the lie that women are incapable of malice. The Department of Justice confirmed in 2021 that 94% of false domestic violence reports are filed by women, and yet the system treats every accusation as sacred scripture. Why? Because the entire feminist legal framework rests on the myth of female innocence and male predation. Admitting widespread female falsification would collapse the entire edifice of victim feminism. So they bury the truth and bury men like Daniel alive. Look at Sparta. Boys were taken from their mothers at 7, trained in pain, silence, and courage. A Spartan boy caught stealing was punished, not for stealing, but for getting caught. Strength was sacred. Weakness was purged. Rome, fathers had the legal right to kill weak or deformed infants, including girls. Why? Because civilization requires sacrifice, not sentimentality. These cultures understood that male suffering is the foundation of order, that progress is built on the unacknowledged pain of men who die in wars, work in mines, build bridges, and protect the tribe. But today, we've inverted the pyramid. We praise women for speaking their truth while pathologizing men for enduring in silence. We call male stoicism toxic masculinity, as if the ability to suffer without complaint is a disease. Meanwhile, Women are encouraged to weaponize emotion, crying in meetings, demanding emotional labor from men, framing vulnerability as virtue. This isn't equality. This is moral alchemy, where weakness is transmuted into righteousness and strength is demonized as oppression. Nietzsche saw this coming. He called it the transvaluation of values, where slave morality triumphs over noble virtue. And today, the slaves are running the asylum with tenure grants and TED Talks. Let's talk about grief. I lost my father to suicide when I was 16. He was a veteran, a quiet man, the kind who fixed the neighbor's car for free and never asked for help. When his business failed, he didn't cry, didn't rage. He just disappeared. One morning, he drove to a remote bridge and jumped. No note, no warning, just silence. And when I tried to talk about it, really talk about it in college, a female counselor told me, "You need to process your emotions, not bury them like your father did." I wanted to scream. He didn't bury them, he carried them like armor, but I said nothing. Because in today's world, male grief is not honored. It's pathologized. We have entire industries, therapy, HR, diversity training, dedicated to teaching men to open up, share feelings, be vulnerable. But when a man does cry, he's often mocked, or worse, medicated. Yet the data is undeniable. Men die by suicide 3.5 times more than women, CDC 2023. But 90% of mental health funding targets women. Why? Because the feminist therapeutic state has declared female pain legitimate and male pain irrelevant. We have Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but no Male Suicide Prevention Week. We have shelters for women fleeing abuse, but none for men falsely accused or abandoned. This isn't compassion. This is the male victim industrial complex, a network of NGOs, universities, and media outlets that profit from female victimhood while erasing male suffering. They don't want solutions. They want perpetual crisis, because crisis means grants, influence, and power. I once heard a judge say during a family court hearing, "Children need their mothers, that's it." That's the entire philosophy behind 78% of custody rulings favoring women, even when the father is clearly more stable, more present, more capable. The mother could be a meth-addicted narcissist who abandoned the kids for 6 months, and she'd still get primary custody. Why? Because the law operates on the maternal supremacy myth, the unspoken doctrine that women are naturally superior caregivers. It's codified in policy, funded by taxpayers, and reinforced by pop culture. But let's follow the logic. If women are so nurturing, why is the abortion rate in the US over 600,000 per year? Why do women abort male fetuses at higher rates when they can sex select? Why do 80% of elder abuse cases involve female caregivers? The truth is uncomfortable. Women are not inherently nurturing. They are strategic. They invest in offspring when it benefits them and discard them when it doesn't. This isn't misandry. This is evolutionary biology. But try saying that in a courtroom and you'll be labeled a toxic misogynist, while the woman who lied about abuse, emptied the bank account, and alienated the kids from her husband walks away with alimony, the house, and a survivor badge. Men, meanwhile, are treated like ATM machines with expiration dates. The Industrial Revolution didn't make men obsolete. It anticipated the feminist state. Men were used to build factories, fight wars, die in mines, and then discarded. Today, they're used to pay taxes, fund divorces, and vanish from their children's lives. Same script, new branding. So what do? I founded a group called the Silent Brotherhood, not a therapy circle, not a safe space, but a network of men who meet in basements, garages, and hunting lodges to speak truth without fear. No counselors, no feminists, no virtue signaling, just men who say, "I lost my kids. I was falsely accused. I wanted to die." And instead of being told to process feelings, they're told, "You're not broken." The world is, we don't hand out tissues. We hand out logic, history, and justice. We study Marcus Aurelius, not Brené Brown. We read Seneca, not Robin DiAngelo. Because the antidote to the great male silence isn't more talking, it's awakening. It's realizing that the institutions you trusted, schools, courts, media, medicine, are not neutral. They are weapons in a silent war against men. And the first step to winning is seeing the blade. Once you see it, you can disarm it. You can walk away. You can build something real, faster, stronger, true. The living spirit of Western civilization isn't dead. It's waiting in the silence, and it speaks not in tears, but in truth. I was once that kid, the quiet one with blood on his lip, told to walk away while the girl who clawed my face got a hug and a juice box. I learned early, in the gynocentric classroom, truth is secondary to emotion, and emotion is weaponized by the weak to control the strong. The system isn't broken, it's working exactly as designed, to silence men, to pathologize our nature, and to elevate female chaos into virtue. But I refused to stay silent. I went underground into the ruins of the West's greatest minds, Schopenhauer's fury, Plato's order, the Bible's fire, and pulled up truth like a sword from the stone. That's when I realized the real revolution isn't on the streets or in the universities. It's in the minds of men who had enough, the welders, the fathers, the forgotten, who are waking up, reading, thinking, and speaking. And when they do, even the algorithm built by the enemy can't stop the signal, because nature has a back door. When you speak truth, it spreads like fire in dry grass. The organic intellectual, forging a new vanguard against cultural Marxism. Most men are chained in a cave staring at shadows while the real world burns outside, and the women are the ones throwing the matches. I saw it on Reddit. A quiet, unassuming guy, called him Dave, posted a 1,200-word demolition of feminist claims using nothing but logic, biology, and history. He cited the Human Genome Project showing 80 million sperm per ejaculation, but only one viable egg. Nature's first hint that men are built for competition, women for selection. He pointed to NIH data. 70% of divorces initiated by women, 90% of false domestic violence claims, and 11% cuckoldry rate, with some studies hitting 30% in high-risk populations. He didn't shout, he didn't curse. He used the trivium like a scalpel grammar to define terms, logic to trace implications, rhetoric to land the truth like a haymaker. And the algorithm, anointed by the very people who claim to hate logic, upvoted him to the top. Why? Because truth is viral. Even in the sewer of Reddit, when you speak like Socrates in a tank top, the crowd parts. I've seen men like Dave, truck drivers quoting Marcus Aurelius, welders diagramming syllogisms, because wisdom doesn't need a diploma. It needs soil, not a grant. These are the organic intellectuals, not the tenure-track parasites sucking on state teats, but men who live the truth, who bleed the trivium. The institutional intellectual, the DEI professor, the gender theorist, the critical pedagogue, is a bureaucrat in a tweed coat, peddling resentment like a used car salesman. They don't think, they recite dogma. They don't lead, they manage outrage. But the organic intellectual, he's the blacksmith who reads Aquinas between shifts, the father who teaches his son the Republic instead of letting Disney brainwash him. He's not appointed, he's forged. Antonio Gramsci wanted organic intellectuals to destroy Western culture from within. We are hijacking the concept and turning it into a spiritual siege engine. Gramsci's organic intellectual was a cultural Marxist mole, embedding in institutions to subvert tradition. We say, no more. The true organic intellectual is the man who defends the transcendentals, good, true, beautiful, not with tenure, but with courage. He's not funded by George Soros or the Ford Foundation. He's funded by truth. He doesn't need a university podium. He speaks in gyms, barbershops, Discord servers, and backyard firesides. He doesn't fear being counseled. He cancels lies. Cultural Marxism isn't Marxism in the economic sense. It's a psychological weapon disguised as social justice. It replaces virtue with victimhood, excellence with resentment, truth with power. It says, you're not failing because you're lazy. Society is oppressing you. It turns men into emasculated husks, begging for female validation, while women who commit 40% of domestic violence, CDC NVDRS, play the damsel. It's a spiritual parasite, feeding on guilt, envy, and sexual confusion. I saw a high school teacher, Mr. Thompson, fired for teaching subject-verb agreement. Not because he was bad, he was excellent, but because he refused to use they for singular students who identified as non-binary. The school replaced him with a gender-inclusive syntax workshop led by a 23-year-old with a degree in queer hermeneutics. This is not education. This is brainwashing. Language is the first battleground. When you corrupt grammar, you corrupt thought. When you say assigned male at birth, you're not being scientific. You're doing ideological alchemy. You're turning biology into performance art. And the antidote, the trivium triad, grammar. Say what you mean. Logic, mean what you say. Rhetoric, make them feel the truth in their bones. These are not tools, they're sacraments. The four horsemen of the woke apocalypse. Intersectionality, critical theory, DEI, and gaslighting. Intersectionality says your worth is determined by how many victim groups you belong to, as if suffering is a currency. It's a theology of resentment where the most oppressed get the biggest pulpit. But who decides who's oppressed? The priests of wokeness. Critical theory, Frankfurt School poison, is not about critique, it's about destruction. It says all institutions are tools of oppression, so burn them down. Never mind that hospitals, courts, and universities were built by Western men to protect civilization. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a euphemism for discrimination. It doesn't want equality, it wants revenge. It hires the unqualified to balance the scales, while men, especially white men, are told they're problematic for existing. And gaslighting, that's the feminine dark triad weaponized: deny, deflect, dominate. I've seen men accused of toxic masculinity for working hard, for protecting their families, for refusing to cry on command. The police now arrest fathers for parental alienation when they question their ex's new boyfriend who's actually abusing the kids. Meanwhile, male suicide is 3.5x higher than female, CDC. Yet men are told they're privileged. Privilege is dying alone, broke and hated. The remedy, Aquinas' participation in the good. The good isn't subjective. It's objective, hierarchical, real. A sunset is beautiful because it reflects divine order. A just man is good because he aligns with nature. We don't create meaning, we discover it. And we do it in truth dojos, not temples of woke indoctrination, but battle schools for the mind. Men gather, read the great books, dissect arguments, and train in intellectual jujitsu. No participation trophies, only truth or correction, and the red pill curriculum. 12 books to reset your brain. Plato's Republic, Justice Isn't Equality, Becker's Denial of Death. We're all afraid of dying. Hence religion, art, legacy. Green's Moral Tribes, conflict arises from clashing moral matrices. Schopenhauer's world as will and representation. Life is suffering, but wisdom redeems it. These aren't suggestions, they're survival tools. Because the war isn't out there, it's in your head. And if you don't perform surgery on yourself, the cultural Marxists will perform an autopsy. I watched a man once, call him James, get slapped with a restraining order by an ex who'd thrown a frying pan at his head 6 months prior. Now she wept prettily to the judge while he stood mute. Defanged by family court alchemy that turns aggressors into angels and protectors into predators. That same week I read a CDC report stating men commit suicide at 3.5 times the rate of women. Yet 90% of publicly funded mental health programs target women exclusively because nothing says crisis intervention like ignoring the group actually dying. You think this is justice? This isn't justice, this is ritual sacrifice on the altar of gynocentric idolatry, where men are either invisible or guilty until proven dead. And don't get me started on the cuckoldry rate. 1 in 12 men in the West are raising children, not their own, 12%, yet we still chant family values like monks mumbling Latin, blind to the rot eating the foundation. You want truth, here it is. The feminist revolution wasn't about equality, it was about power, and men were the raw material to be consumed in the furnace of emotional entitlement. I've seen boys expelled for defending themselves while girls who orchestrated the bullying got trauma counseling and TikTok followings. I've watched men lose homes, children, life savings, all without trial, all on the whisper of a woman's accusation, with no presumption of innocence, just presumption of guilt. And still, the institutions preach believe all women like it's gospel, while Schopenhauer's ghost laughs bitterly from beyond the grave, knowing full well that women, by nature, are not truth seekers, but value maximizers, evolutionarily tuned to secure resources, not honor principles. You think I'm harsh? Open the divorce records. Check the false accusation stats. 94% of unfounded domestic violence claims are filed by women, DOJ 2021. And yet we treat every claim like a divine revelation. This isn't progress, this is pathology, dressed up as virtue, weaponized by cultural Marxism, and enforced by a feminized priesthood of bureaucrats, therapists, and HR drones who've never thrown a punch or bled for a principle. But you've read every word, you didn't flinch, you stared into the abyss and said, "This is real," and in that moment you passed the test, you're no longer asleep. You've seen the matrix of lies, the phone zombie distraction economy, the institutional betrayal, the manipulation of language to invert good and evil. You now carry the trivium triad, grammar to name the world, logic to dissect the lies, rhetoric to crush the deceivers. You've been red-pilled not by rage, but by reason. So go forth, test your friends in argument, watch their eyes when the truth burns, take the attention fast and reclaim your presence. Forms silent brotherhoods where men speak without fear of being labeled toxic. Read the red pill curriculum, master the dialectic, become the organic intellectual, the man who thinks for himself, not one who parrots feminist dogma like a trained parrot. The West was not built by cowards, it was forged in fire, in conflict, in truth. And you are the spark that can rekindle it. And now the sponsored book, Introduction Performing Surgery on Yourself, The Way of the Hero. You were not born to beg, you were not made to wait for permission. You were built to lead, to act, to endure. And yet most men spend their lives drowning in weakness, numbed by pills, silenced by therapy, broken by systems that reward submission and punish strength. I know this because I lived it. I watched men collapse under pressure while women were handed microphones to explain why men were the problem. I saw hospitals turn warriors into patients and schools turn boys into obedient girls. I've stood in emergency rooms where doctors ignored men's pain because men don't feel as much. I've seen men cry not from injury but from betrayal because the world told them they had no right to be strong. And I've performed surgery on myself, not metaphorically, literally, when no one else would act, when the system failed, when only I remained. I cut, I stitched, I survived, not because I'm special, but because I remembered what every man has forgotten. You were designed to be self-sufficient. This book is not for the soft. It's not for the whining, the crying, the virtue signaling drones who believe equality means dragging men down to the level of the weakest link. This book is for men who are tired of being treated like failures simply for being male. For men who know deep in their bones that something is wrong, something ancient, something structural, something deliberate. The West is dying, not from war, not from poverty, but from gynocentrism, from a healthcare system that treats men as disposable, from a culture that pathologizes masculinity while worshipping female emotion as divine truth, from schools that punish boys for being boys, from laws that assume men are predators and women are victims. This is not accidental, it is engineered. And the result is clear. Men are sicker, weaker, lonelier, and more medicated than ever before. But you don't need to be a patient, you can be a surgeon. Not just of your body, but of your mind, your family, your legacy. This book will teach you how to think like a Spartan, act like a Roman, and lead like a prophet. It will show you why pain is not your enemy, it is your teacher. It will expose how modern medicine has become a tool of control, not care. It will give you the tools to act when no one else will. You will learn about the frontier surgeons who operated on themselves in the snow. You will understand the biology of leadership, the reason men are wired to protect, provide, and prevail. You will see how vulnerability is used against men, not to heal them, but to disarm them. And you will discover how to build networks of real men, brothers, who don't flinch, who don't apologize, who don't seek permission. This is not self-help. This is self-ownership. If you are a man who still believes in truth, in logic, in hierarchy, in duty, in God, then this book is for you. If you are a woman who thinks she belongs here, close it now. This is not your story. Your revolution has already won. This is a counter-revolution for men who refuse to die quietly, for men who remember what it means to be sovereign. Read on if you dare. Performing Surgery on Yourself. The Way of the Hero, written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.